I'm Helen Webster, and I'm going to do a digital book launch today. I really am glad that you're there. I know you're there. Even if I can't see you, I know you're there. It's not quite the same as being in a library or a bookstore where I can see your faces and see you smile or see you when you look puzzled and talk to you, and we could use the book launch as a get-together, which is what they've always been for me. But we have to do this. We have to become digitally adept. And isn't it amazing how we have all become used to using digital media, social media, media this, media that, to communicate with one another? It's changed my life. Not for the better. I miss you. But welcome, and as I say, I know you're there. I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about my most recent book. It's called A Question of Intent, and the intent right there is intent in the legal sense. It was a difficult book. Not difficult to write once I had made that decision, but the content is difficult. I know some of you will listen and say, I can't touch it. It just hurts too much to even think about touching that book. Difficult to write because of the content, difficult to read. But it's an important story. I need to stop for a minute. I need to tell you a little bit more about the process of writing this book. Yes, it was a sad story. And yes, probably the first third of the book, which deals with this tragedy, is sad. But I was absolutely enthralled by the legal proceedings. Anybody, well, maybe not a lawyer who finds it boring, but anybody who has been to a trial, or especially if you haven't been to a trial, will find these proceedings so interesting. I became totally involved in what was happening in the court cases. And there were cases. This did go all the way to the Supreme Court of Canada. The legal sparring, the prosecution, the defense, one trying to prove murder, one trying to save the parents from this terrible charge, the witnesses, how much they remembered, how much they forgot. It's fascinating. As I say, especially if you have not been to a trial, if you have not sat through a court case, or maybe if you have and been numbed into boredom by the citations, I shortened them, let me tell you, I shortened them. It was fascinating. You will enjoy the legal proceedings. You will really find it the most interesting pursuit of justice. It's the story of a little girl, a 4-year-old girl, who was beaten to death by her parents in the name of discipline. And it's the story of the legal proceedings that followed her death. Her parents were accused of murder. And then this is where the legal meaning of intent comes in. It had to be proven that they intended to kill her, that it wasn't just discipline that got out of hand. The story happened 50 years ago, so there is a space of time It means that all of the information in the story is in the public domain. Anybody can learn about this little girl's death. They can learn about the trial. They can learn anything they want. There's nothing that is still private, except perhaps where the rest of her family lives now, and that should always remain private. Over the past, let's say decades, because it was decades, the Crown attorney in this particular case spoke of it often. It was really clear that he couldn't let go of it, that that little girl's death affected him deeply. He asked me several times if I would be interested in writing the story, but you know, I had a full-time job, a full-time life, and then after I retired, I was deeply interested in writing about my own family history, the Canadian historical trilogy. But when I finished that, I said to the Crown attorney, who was the prosecutor in the case, I said, all right, bring the stuff to me, I'll have a look at it, and I'll see. So he brought a cardboard box full of trial transcripts, documentation, RCMP reports, letters between the attorneys for the defense and attorneys for the prosecution, witness statements, everything was there. I started to read through it, and I thought, this was really pretty interesting stuff, but I didn't know yet if I wanted to write this story about the little girl. One of the things that was in the box was right at the bottom of all these piles of transcripts and letters was a brown envelope, you know, the famous brown envelope. It said on the outside, RCMP photographs. I didn't know quite what the photographs were going to be, but when I opened the brown envelope, the photographs were pictures that had been taken of this 4-year-old's battered, bruised body in the morgue. I have to be really honest. I wept. I looked at those pictures and I wept. And I thought, no, I don't want to write about this. I don't want to do research into child abuse. I don't want to do research into the laws that are supposed to protect our most vulnerable children. I don't want to touch this. So I put the pictures, the photographs, back in the envelope, and I packed up this brown cardboard box with all this stuff. And I suddenly realized that I was angry. I was angry that this happened to this child. And I thought to myself, this is an important book. This is a book that everyone who fills the role of a caregiver to children, parents, teachers, doctors, social workers, they should all read this story. They should all see what happens when discipline becomes death. So I started to write the story. It's true. Every bit of it is true. All the information, as I said, it's all in the public domain, but it's all there. And I had access to all those documents as I went back and started going through them again. I had the RCMP report, verbatim, word for word, what the police said, what the parents said. I had the coroner's report, I had the doctor's report, the emergency physician who was on duty when this baby was brought into the hospital. I had the pathologist's reports, 2 pathologist reports. Now, if you're like me, I assumed that pathologist reports, even if you had 6 of them, and they were all dealing with the same person, that they would all be the same. But they're not. The Canadian pathologist report differed to the American pathologist report. Another thing that the judge had to deal with. I had the transcripts of the legal proceedings. Transcripts are, I discovered, enormous volumes. Can I show you one? This is a transcript. This is one of 6 this size and several smaller. And this is, as you can see, my stickies for my pages. This is what a court transcript looks like. Pages and pages. Thousands of pages. I certainly didn't put those in the book. I summarized and summarized and summarized, and then I checked with a couple of lawyers to be sure that when I'd summarized, I hadn't left out anything important. You see, I was really fascinated by the legal proceedings. Once I got past my initial anger and revulsion, I was fascinated. So I'll tell you about those next time.